Why the Boston Celtics trading for Malcom Brogdon scares the rest of the NBA. After being traded from Indiana to Boston, a lot of people are wondering what kind of impact Malcom Brogdon could have on the Celtics. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. The Boston Celtics are coming off a phenomenal year last year, and they surprised a ton of people, including myself. Going into the season, a lot of people expected Boston to be a playoff team, but they didn't necessarily expect them to do as well as they did end up doing last year. After a relatively rough start to the beginning of the year, the Celtics completely turned everything around the midpoint of the year, and ended up not only playing very well during the regular season, but once it came down to the playoffs, also playing at a phenomenal level, even sweeping the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. And then of course they made it all the way to the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors, where although they didn't win, they definitely put up some good performances. And the great thing about this Boston team is they are a very young team, so even though they weren't able to win the championship this previous season, the experience that they did learn is going to be very, very valuable for them going forward, and assuming all their young players, or most of their young players, do improve as the years do progress, which is something that I personally would expect to happen, you would expect them to just continuously get better and potentially even make it back to the finals and maybe even win an NBA championship down the road. But something that the Celtics are doing that I really like is not only are they relying on their young talent to get better as the years do progress, and the improvements that their young players do make would eventually take them back to the finals and may even win an NBA championship, but they're also looking to make improvements each and every offseason as well. And one of the biggest improvements that they did make this offseason was trading for Malcom Brogdon. And the Celtics didn't even need to give up all that much when acquiring Malcom Brogdon. They only gave up Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, Nick Stauskas, a couple other supplementary pieces, and a first round pick. And when you're talking about a player of the caliber of Malcom Brogdon, that's certainly not all that much to give up. And the reason why the Celtics were able to get him for so cheap was mostly due to the fact that Malcom does struggle with injuries. And as the old saying does go, the best ability is availability. Because even if Malcom is a really effective player once he's on the court, if he's not on the court all that often, it's obviously not going to help you that much as a team. So this definitely is somewhat of a gamble for the Celtics, but in my opinion, based upon what they had to give up, I think this is a very, very well calculated risk for them. But now let's quickly look at what Malcom is able to do on the court and why I personally think he's such a good player. So starting with Malcom's three-point jump shot, this is definitely an aspect of his game that he does excel in, as he is a 37% shooter from deep on his career. But from that three-point range, Malcom does most of his damage with catch and shoot three-point jump shots, while he also does have the ability to create for himself from that three-point range a little bit with a nice pull-up three-point jump shot. But I would say Malcom mostly does his damage from that three-point range with a catch and shoot shot. But now moving on to his mid-range jump shot shooting, I would probably say that this is the best aspect of his offensive game, as Malcom does have a really nice pull-up mid-range jump shot, as well as having the ability to of course catch and shoot, sidestep, step back, even cross over into a mid-range jumper. He even has the ability to hit that post turnaround fadeaway that he does utilize at times, but it isn't necessarily something that he utilizes all that often. But now talking about Malcom's driving and finishing ability, this is also a really good aspect of his game, where although Malcom isn't necessarily the most athletic player, he is a pretty crafty player, and once driving all the way to the basket, he does manipulate his body in such a way that it makes it very difficult to block his shots, and he does have the ability to put up layups with either his left or right hand, and does it at a very high level as well. And overall, in terms of his individual scoring ability, I would definitely say that Malcom is a very good individual scorer. Although he's not at the level of an all-star type guy, he definitely is at the level of a guy who's a little bit under an all-star level player offensively. But the great thing about Malcom is not only is he a really good scorer, but he's also also a very good passer and playmaker as well. As this previous season, he did average 6 assists per game, but even besides the numbers, you could just tell out there that Malcom truly knows how to run an NBA offense and do so at a very high level as a starting level point guard. Malcom really excels once running the pick and roll or pick and pop, or even just breaking down the defense by blowing by his initial defender and kicking out to a wide open catch and shoot 3-point shooter. And this is especially important late in games, just to have a point guard like Malcom who really knows how to calm down the offense and find easy shots for his teammates. And having a high level point guard like that has a capability to do something like that, it's just going to have a huge beneficial effect on your team overall, and it's just going to help your team win a lot more games and a lot more close games that you otherwise would have lost if you didn't have a point guard like Malcom. But Malcom is also very valuable on the defensive end of the court as well, as he is able to guard opposing point guards at a very high level, which of course just adds to the value of Malcom. And overall, even though Malcom Brogdon isn't necessarily a flashy player and he isn't necessarily a huge name, I do think he's a very good player individually, and I think he is the kind of player that would fit in with the Celtics roster perfectly. And I think this for a couple different reasons, but probably the first and main reason is how well Malcom plays off ball. Because when you have two guys on your roster like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you're going to want to have the ball in their hands most of the time. And now when you add a player like Malcom Brogdon to this roster that has a really nice ability to spot up from the top of the key and hit a catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, or just spot up in general, but also has a nice ability to move off ball by cutting backdoor for wide open layups, or just moving around in general, it's just going to make this Celtics offense that much more deadly. But another reason why I think Malcom is such a great fit is now the Celtics are adding another ball handler to the roster that can calm everyone down in clutch situations and really just facilitate the offense at times when the Celtics are struggling. And just having a guy like that is extremely valuable to your organization, but especially once it comes down to the playoffs, this could be a huge benefit for Boston. But although I definitely do think this is a great pickup on paper for Boston, it's going to be interesting to see how he actually does end up fitting in with Boston. But probably the main key to look out for is if Malcom Brogdon is able to stay healthy for the most part this season. And if he is able to do so, this would definitely be a phenomenal trade for the Celtics. But if he is not able to stay healthy for the most part of the year, and he's basically staying on that same trajectory that he was for the previous few years and just being an injury prone player, then obviously this would not be a good trade for Boston. But in my opinion, I think this is definitely a very good risk for the Celtics to take, as it is a very high upside risk. But I guess we'll see what happens as time does progress. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the addition of Malcom Brogdon was a big one for the Celtics, or do you not agree? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.